Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed with the official part of the ceremonies and I give my voice to Ambassador Ryszard Schnepf, and as he welcomes our guest, Ambassador Brzezinski, and also our host, Rector Alojzy Nowak, we as a university prepared a short, really surprise. We can call it a little step in a lane of memory for the Brzezinski family's legacy here in the University of Warsaw. So if I can dim the lights and perhaps you can watch the presentation.
Odniósł, oraz Uniwersytecie Warszawskim ergo ego te doctorem honoris causa creo, gradu renuncio, omnia tre doctoris honoris causa jura ac privilegia in te contra, in eius crei idem, hoc diploma universitatis, sigillo infinitum fidit in manus prae.
So, Ambassador, Mr. Rector as well, and Ambassador Brzezinski, please come on the stage. Rector, please also as well, and Ryszard, I'll give you the voice.
Everyone is seated? Okay, good. Dobry wieczór and good evening. My name is Ryszard Schnepf, and I'm a professor at the American Studies Center at this alma mater. I'm delighted to see so many attendees. I understand your true interest comes from your intellectual curiosity to meet and listen to our special guest tonight, and mainly him. This will make me brief. It is my pleasure to welcome you all, and particularly the veterans, former presidents, former prime ministers, former rectors, former ministers, former ambassadors, and generals. Well, the word former becomes a sign of our time. To balance it, let me say hello to the future, our students who will shape this turbulent world and make it better. Welcome all. My special greeting goes to Ambassador Andrij Deszczycia, my friend. Actually, I don't need to say that the highest representative of the heroic country, Ukraine, here in Poland. I don't need to tell you we are living in a difficult, full of doubts and worries times. All that due to unprecedented aggression and war at our border. A few weeks ago, in his speech at the Royal Castle patio, President Biden declared the unconditional fight against authoritarianism and oppression worldwide. Probably long, an exhausting struggle to make democracy, human rights, rule of law, and free media win. It is how the world may look like if we are determined. And this is the right time to listen and talk to outstanding, highly experienced American diplomat and international acknowledged foreign policy expert, U.S. Ambassador to Poland, Dr. Mark Brzezinski. Welcome, Mark, and thank you for accepting the university's invitation. Finally, let me welcome our host, Professor Alojzy Nowak, rector of the University of Warsaw, who also was a spiritual author of this event. Welcome. Okay, many experts say that to maintain the audience attention, the speaker must swear or tell a joke every couple of minutes. Personally, I dislike curse language, and this is not in the right time for making fun. So let me finish with this and invite Rector Nowak to the lecture. Rector.
Ambassador Brzezinski, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome you back to Warsaw University. We had a chance to have you some years ago. Your father got an honorary degree here. We were very proud of your father. We are just now very proud of you. The family Brzezinski, the Brzezinski family, has very strong position in Poland, but also here in Warsaw and at Warsaw University. We are very proud that both of you, your dad and you, and the Brzezinski family, did so many good things Poland to become important player, important country, and recognized country, not only in Europe, but also in America. When I was a student, I had a chance to meet your father at Georgetown University, both Henry Kissinger and your father. We had short but very nice and remarkable discussion at that time. And frankly, I have never never thought that one day, as a rector of Warsaw University, I will have a chance to welcome you at Warsaw University and to say thank you for all what you did for Poland, for what you have been doing just now for Poland, Ukraine, as we had the discussion earlier a few minutes ago, and for the better world. We all, the students, the professors, and our colleagues and friends from other institutions were awaiting for you for some days, some weeks. We were very patient because we knew how busy you were. Just now, the floor is yours, and then I am sure will be questions and answers, and we will be discussing many things, and again, feel at home, and thank you for accepting this invitation, and thank you, Ryszard, for helping us to bring Ambassador Brzezinski to us. Thank you very much.
Well, we all love America. I didn't know that Rector would talk about the family, so let me continue a little bit about it. Okay, please be seated. This is my role. Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Rector. The Brzezinski family is both exceptional for its achievements and probably one of the most known in Poland. The father, we just saw him, is a big statesman, national security advisor to President Carter, and author of many books which reshaped our thinking on world policy. His kids used to call him the chief. No surprise. He was a real chief. Ian, former Defense Department's Undersecretary and expert at Atlantic Council. The youngest, Mika, a vibrant TV star, and together with Joe Scarborough, a host of Morning Joe at MSNBC. And finally, Mark, diplomat, former US ambassador to Sweden, NSC director, and now the highest US representative in Warsaw, who years ago here at this university, some of you might remember him from that time, was doing research on Polish constitutionalism. What a coincidence. We really need some study, good study. The family picture, though, wouldn't look complete without one crucial for the Brzezinski's history person, Emily Benes-Brzezinski. Probably the most distinguished and exceptional lady I've ever met. And not only a dedicated mother, in the best sense of the word, but also a great artist and sculptor, with her works in the best museums and galleries of the world. In 2014, shortly after Maidan, at the ground opening of her newest works exhibition in the top Washingtonian Krieger Gallery, Zbigniew Brzezinski, converted into a host guide, was explaining to us the technique and meaning of the Ukraine trunk, the enormous open tree sculpture with hundreds of faces representing protesting Maidan people looking at us. Shocking experience. It was in 2014. And here we are, like in a continuous, never-ending story. Ambassador Mark Brzezinski and his lecture, Global Leadership, Lessons from the Ukraine Crisis. Well, it looks like we're gonna have the second major American pronouncement in Poland on global issues after President Biden's speech. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate that.
Your mom is...
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard. Rector Novak, Chancellor Gray, Ambassador Schnepf, Ambassador Deszczycia, thank you so much for hosting me today. I'm so honored to be here at the University of Warsaw, in Poland, now at this time. I've been looking so forward to my visit here since I arrived in Warsaw in January to begin my mission as President Biden's personal representative to Poland. And as the rector recollected how much my late father gave to Poland, and that's true, I can only say how much Poland has given to me, my brother, and sister. Believe me, it is a two-way street. Before I say another word, let me say this. Thank you. Dziękuję. On behalf of President Biden, thank you, Poland, for all you're doing to address this crisis in Ukraine. Thank you, Polish young people, for organizing on social media, to drive to the border, to pick up a family, and to take care of them. You are our heroes. Every year, Time magazine announces a person of the year. This year, my hope is that the person of the year is a split screen. Half is of the Ukrainian fighter and the fighter-in-chief, President Zelensky, and the other half is the Polish young person organizing on social and going to the border to help someone, but also introducing to the world a whole new national example of how to greet and take care of refugees. That is you. Thanks to all who have helped, Poland is seen as a humanitarian superpower. I am proud to be a U.S. ambassador to a humanitarian superpower. 30 years ago, I was a Fulbright scholar here at the University of Warsaw. I lived on ulica Tamka, not too far from here, right next to Dom Chopina. I was writing about the struggle for constitutionalism in post-communist Poland and about the collision between law and power. I remember sitting for hours in the little library at the Wydział Prawa I Administracja, and I wrote a book on the topic of the supremacy of law over power. I spent time at the Trybunał Konstytucyjny just as it was forming and coming together. And as a young American lawyer, I had a dream come true. I had the chance to write a book as constitutionalism was taking root in Poland, with respect for enduring constitutional arrangements being a central test of the effective operation and growth of liberal democracy. I taught a class on American politics here, and I learned just as much from the students as they did from me. I studied Polish language primarily by making my own course. I hung a sign at the gates of the University of Warsaw, you know, where you just come in through the gates and there's just on the right a little bulletin board where you can hang like a sign or an announcement. And I hung a sign there that said, I am an American and I want to learn Polish. I will speak with you for a half hour in English if you speak with me for a half hour in Polish. And I had these little tear things at the bottom of the sign with my telephone number on it. And my phone did not stop ringing. I had such a good time with those wymianys. And I remember the different students that I had these wymianys with. I remember a medical student, for example, named Agnieszka Lis. I don't know where she went on to, but such great exchanges with her and with others as I struggled to learn this difficult language. Now, 30 years later, I'm back. There are 4 generations of leaders in this room. Some of you may just be starting your academic or professional career and are new to this campus, as I was back in 1992. Some of you were driving forces behind some of the most pivotal moments in Polish-American relations over the past several decades. I can think of Ambassador Jerzy Koźmiński and Ryszard Schnepf, longtime family friends who certainly fit that definition. I am sure, though, that we all share one thing in common right now. We are trying to process and reflect on the complex situation that we have in our world today. Vladimir Putin has brought conflict and upheaval back to Europe. For 2.5 months, he has waged an unjust war against the innocent Ukrainian people who just want to live their life in peace. There has been darkness, anxiety, despair, confusion, terror, sadness, and anger. But through all this, we have also seen hope. We have seen resolve, and we have seen the West united like never before. We are working together as one now, more than we even were a year ago, standing together with the people of Ukraine who are bravely fighting not just for their freedom and their lives, but for the ideals that unite peace-loving people around the world, whether in Warsaw or Washington, Mariupol or Munich, Lviv or London, Odessa or Ottawa. America, I am proud to say, is doing its part. President Biden has just submitted to Congress a request for $33 billion to assist in the struggle in Ukraine. These past few months have also shone a light on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, whose leadership has inspired not just his own people, but those around the world. What makes someone a good leader? A person people want to follow, and whom people want to see succeed, and who want to help succeed. Vladimir Putin would have us believe that leadership is conveyed through fear and lies and brutality, steel-eyed gazes, projections of authority and intimidation, and unimpeachable directives demanding blind loyalty and obedience. Jailing, killing, or otherwise silencing the many citizens who don't wish to follow. Rather than inspiring people who want to follow him, most of the world condemns Putin as a war criminal. Empathy, openness, the ability to listen to and compromise with those with different opinions is a better approach. The 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, said that figuring out how to empower the people around you to help them succeed is one of his keys to leadership. In a study conducted by Gallup, an American analytics company, it found that trust, compassion, stability, and hope are qualities that employees admire the most in their leaders. While citizens aren't employees of a country, indeed the reverse is true, this is relevant because these are the traits that inspire us and bring out the best in the people around us. These same traits are why the citizens of Ukraine have rallied behind President Zelensky. It is why the world admires him. He has stood his ground and has exuded strength, compassion, stability, and resolve that has reverberated around the globe. Putin and many international observers may have assumed that once the invasion began, President Zelensky would move quickly to evacuate himself and his family to govern in exile from another country. I'm sure he had many opportunities to do that. But when concerns for his safety were raised, Zelensky is widely reported to have responded by saying, "The fight is here. I need ammunition, not a ride." With this decision to stay, Zelensky faced legitimate threats to his own life. "The enemy has marked me as target number one," as he put it. "My family is target number two," is what he conveyed to world leaders early in the war. By remaining in the capital of Kiev, he rallied a nation with his steady hand and with his loyalty, his loyalność to his people. He has become an international symbol of Ukrainian unity. He has also shown courage in facing the facts as they are, not as we want them to be. Bret Stephens, a columnist at the New York Times, wrote, "Zelensky has made a point of telling Ukrainians the hard truth and of telling off supposed well-wishers that their words are hollow and their support wanting. Our leaders mainly specialize in telling people what they want to hear." Zelensky, on the other hand, tells people what they need to hear. He tells it like it is. These honest messages are shared around the globe on social media. As has been put by one commentator, Putin has unleashed a 20th century attack and war against Ukraine, and Zelensky has unleashed a 21st century information warfare in response. Zelensky has redefined how nations respond to conflict. The ammunition of President Zelensky's information warfare is glibly stating the hard facts. President Zelensky understands what makes people anxious and uncertain and knows how to convey that. He addressed the Russian people in their own language. He spoke to the Congress of the United States and to the American people, invoking 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, so that communities thousands of miles away could relate to the atrocities happening in Mariupol and Bucha. His messages show genuine concern, genuine empathy when discussing Ukrainians who have lost children, husbands, wives, parents, and siblings. This has won sympathy and support of the world. And these messages have forced the international community to reckon with pleas Zelensky has shared on his videos. Prove you are with us. Through meetings with individual leaders, through direct appeals to the European Union and to the United Nations, addresses to parliaments and to the US Congress, and discussions with anyone who will listen, Zelensky has forced the world to go further and faster than anyone could have imagined. Due in no small part to Zelensky's direct pleas, nations around the world have deployed an unprecedented package of sanctions and penalties against Russia, isolating and crippling its economy. Switzerland has broken from its historical neutrality to support sanctions. Germany has abandoned Nord Stream 2. The EU is moving towards energy independence from Russia. Sweden and Finland are considering joining NATO. As a former US ambassador to Sweden for 4 years, that Sweden is joining NATO is such a sea change, and it is so great that they are doing that. While Putin leads through fear, it is Zelensky who leads through hope and understanding. People see a patriot, a fighter, a husband, and a father. In this way, he has bridged the gap between leader and citizen. He is one of them, a Ukrainian citizen standing with his fellow Ukrainians in the fight for freedom. That his wife stands with him speaks volumes, and it was awesome to see our First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, meeting with Ukraine's First Lady, Olena Zaleska, yesterday in Kiev. Zelensky's courage to defend his country and democracy have also earned him a great honor in the United States. Last month, he was named recipient of the John F. Kennedy Profile in Courage Award, which is presented to public servants who have made courageous decisions of conscience without regard for their personal or professional consequences. The global leadership lessons continue with the Mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko, another unlikely hero. a towering man of 200 centimeters or 6'7". He's a former heavyweight champion and Olympic gold medalist who entered the arena of Ukrainian politics in 2014. As a professional boxer, he went by the clarifying name Dr. Iron Fist. His strength and power made him successful, but it was his mental game that made him a champion. At the highest level of the sport, if you win the mental battle, you win the match. Mayor Klitschko will not back down. He has been seen in the trenches. He is fighting on the front lines. He is conducting military drills, handling hand grenades, and he's been running through underground tunnels. At the start of the war, he told his people in a video message, quote, "I believe in Ukraine, I believe in my country, and I believe in my people." And they believe in him. Mayor Klitschko has inspired his fellow Ukrainians to defend their land just like President Zelensky. And then there's the courage of Ukraine's ambassador to the United States, Oksana Markarova. The former finance minister is working on economic stabilization in her country. She is an advocate for her homeland in Washington, D.C. In a recent interview in the Washington Post, Ambassador Markarova said that, as a diplomat, she too is a soldier in the broader context. She is no different from Ukrainian forces on the ground. Ambassador Markarova went on to share her priorities at the Ukrainian embassy, which are threefold. One, asking for military and defensive support. Two, rallying for other countries to hold Russia accountable through sanctions. And her third priority is finding other ways to support her people through humanitarian assistance and energy support. Ambassador Markarova will not give up on her quest to protect Ukraine and democracy. Every passing day is a chance to stop the war. I am also proud of how my own country has stood up for Ukraine. The United States has shown exceptional leadership against Russia's aggression. We have never been more committed and engaged with Poland, our allies, and our partners. There is a political imperative in America to support Ukraine and to support Poland. President Joe Biden sounded the alarm and started uniting allies long before a single tank crossed the border, because he made the decision to share intelligence to convince others of the impending danger. That we were able to share months before the war began, U.S. intelligence, thanks to President Biden's okay, it allowed everyone here, Poland, the Baltic states, and others, to get prepared. And the intelligence, which correctly and in a detailed fashion understood the defensive and offensive structures of the Russian military and what the political leaders of Russia intended to do with it, got it exactly right. And we were ready. President Biden and his administration have responded from day one of the war to help bind together the nations of the free world in supplying Ukraine with weapons, with ammunition, with armor, and with intelligence. And President Biden has been steadfast, saying that we will never fail in our determination to defend freedom and oppose tyranny. President Biden is a firm believer in face-to-face diplomacy and collective defense. That's why he traveled to Poland in March, first to Rzeszów to look east, and then to Warsaw to meet with President Andrzej Duda, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski, and the Polish people and the refugees from Ukraine. We have continued to host countless high-level visitors in the past few months, from Vice President Kamala Harris to Secretary of State Anthony Blinken 3 times, to Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin 3 times, and so many others in just the last 8 weeks. I've been here for a total of 14 weeks since I arrived day 1, and never in history of American-Polish relations have so many high-level officials come all at once. And they all came here to send a message of unity, to thank Poland for its efforts in supporting refugees from Ukraine. And these visits are far from just symbolic. They have the power to change the course of history, and they bear witness for our democracy to make decisions on how to join you in this struggle. Just last week, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi became the highest-ranking elected official to visit Kiev following the visits of Secretaries Austin and Blinken the week prior. Secretary Blinken said it was important for him to be there, to have conversations in person, to tell President Zelensky face-to-face that the United States intends to resume diplomatic operations in Ukraine and that new military aid is on the way. At every step, the United States has given our Ukrainian partners what they've needed to defend their country, and we've coordinated and facilitated similar support from dozens of other countries. President Biden has helped allied governments feel empowered to act by repeatedly assuring their people that NATO's Article 5 is alive and well, that we will defend every inch of NATO territory, and that means Poland. He has worked with Congress to secure $13.6 billion already in military aid, humanitarian assistance, and support for NATO since the war began, and there may be more on the way, as I said earlier. Last week, President Biden asked Congress for another $33 billion aid package, underlining our continued commitment to the Ukrainian people. President Biden also announced the Uniting for Ukraine program to enable Ukrainians seeking refuge to come directly from Europe to the United States. While some may choose to journey onward to the United States, many of these refugees have already found a home in Poland. Which brings me to the final leader that I must highlight before you today. The people of this great country, Poland. Over 3 million refugees from Ukraine, mainly women and children, have crossed the Polish border. It's Polish families who have opened their hearts and their homes to complete strangers. The Polish government estimates that approximately 600,000 Ukrainian refugees are being hosted by Polish families. Refugees are also eligible for PESEL numbers, which entitle them to work, free health care, schooling, and bonuses for families with children. Civil society has also stepped up to help. I personally visited the transition center at Stoją train station, run by Polskie Centrum Pomocy Międzynarodowej, and saw the network of organizations and people in action. PCPM normally focuses its refugee assistance overseas, in places like Lebanon and Ethiopia. Never did they expect to use their expertise to build a refugee assistance center in the middle of Warsaw, Poland. On my visit, I witnessed firsthand the generosity and compassion of the Polish people. Private businesses offering SIM cards, housing, toys, pet supplies for people who brought their pets. At the transition center, refugees can get a hot meal, a place to rest, medical assistance if they need it, directions to get to an onward destination. Many of the staff were volunteers, volunteering to help keep the center clean by picking up trash and replenishing supplies, volunteering to play with kids while parents get a much-needed break. While many countries have opened their borders to Ukrainians, Poland has led the way in its forward-leaning, unabashed commitment to create a warm welcome for anyone fleeing Ukraine. They opened their hearts and their homes in a way that only a neighbor, especially one who can not only sympathize but empathize with what the Ukrainians are going through. From right here in Warsaw to the cities and towns and villages in each of Poland's 17 provinces, it's the government, the companies, the NGOs, the people, unified in an all-hands-on-deck approach to help their Ukrainian brothers and sisters. What Poland is doing, what President Biden and the United States is doing, what President Zelensky, Mayor Klitschko, Ambassador Markarova are doing, will be written down in the history books. Their actions will inspire people for generations to come. What you are collectively doing, what we are collectively doing, gives meaning to the words Slava Ukraina. And let me close by invoking something that my late father always advised young people who came to him seeking advice. And I saw it my entire life, young people from everywhere, from around the world, coming to him to get advice. What might they do with their lives? He always said, embrace every opportunity to do something bigger than just for yourself. Poland is leading by example in doing for Ukraine something much, much bigger than just for itself. We're so proud to call you our special friends. We're so proud to call you our allies. Dziękuję ślicznie. Thank you for coming today.
All right. We'll break a little bit the protocol and the planning. You know, the improvising is our specialty. We are very good in that. Ambassador Deszczycia, please, come on.
I also didn't plan to have a speech, but as a diplomat we can improvise a bit. Szanownie Panie Rektorze, Magnificencju tej wielkiej uczelni, dear Ambassador Brzezinski, dear Mark, dear drogi Ryszardzie, Ambasador Schnepf, Szanowni Państwo, I would like to thank, I understand that we use the English language, but though I will refer to Ambassador Brzezinski, thanking him for a great analysis of what has happened in this part of the world during the last 2.5 months. It's a big change and a big geopolitical change that we all will see and we all will acknowledge in the nearest future. I would like to thank you for your words of support, solidarity, and admiration of Ukrainian people, President Zelensky, and Ukrainian armed forces. And I would like to thank you for sending us arms, because the arms what we need to get a victory. Of course, we thank for political support, for humanitarian aid, but the arms will finally define who is the winner. And we, my countrymen and Ukrainian soldiers has proved that they are capable to use these arms, NATO standards arms, to fight with Russians and win with Russians. I chciałem tutaj się też zwrócić do Polski. Dziękuję wam bardzo. Dziękuję wam za szczerość, otwartość i serdeczność, z którą przyjęliście Ukraińców uciekających od wojny, zmuszonych uciekać od wojny, ale którzy znaleźli się tutaj jak w domu i czują się tutaj jak w domu. I to dzięki wam. I wam tutaj na tej uczelni i studentom, którzy przyjęli do swoich grup czy swoich paczek u studentów z Ukrainy. I też chcę podziękować rządu Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej, prezydentowi Andrzejowi Dudzie za osobiste zaangażowanie się w tą pomoc. Na pewno to zostanie zapisane w naszej historii i jak powiedział prezydent Zełenski, prawdopodobnie, że już nie będzie granic pomiędzy naszymi państwami. Liczymy na to, ale tych granic nie powinno być też z innego powodu. I to chcę podkreślić dziś, w tym dniu, który jest Dniem Europy. Obchodzimy Dzień Europy i bardzo dziękuję, że mamy tutaj flagę europejską, bo my dążymy do członkostwa w Unii Europejskiej. I będziemy ten dzień obchodzić 9 maja jako Dzień Europy w Ukrainie, a nie jak wymyślony przez sowiecką propagandę Dzień Pobiedy. To zostanie w przeszłości. Chciałem poprosić tutaj, że na pewno możecie liczyć na naszą młodzież, na młodą generację Ukraińców, młode pokolenie, generation to po angielsku, na młode pokolenie Ukraińców, którzy na pewno będą razem z wami, albo że razem z nami budować wspólną Europę bez wojen, demokratyczną i z zasadami wolnego świata. And I would like to ask the United States to support us and support Poland to help us to become a member of the European Union as soon as possible. Thank you very much for it.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Andrij, for your words. As you can see, the audience can feel it, that it was natural. It has not been planned previously. It was just something that we perhaps expected. And I expect personally that very soon you will celebrate the Europe's Day as your day, not only our day. Okay. This is not my lecture, my speech, Mark. It's yours. Okay, so let's start working. Now the more challenging part, the Q&A, the question and answers. Please raise your hand as you want to. Okay, I see Mr. Rector Węgleński. Please abstain from the statement. Try to be brief in your questions. That's my remark, okay? Mr. Rector, Professor Węgleński. Yeah, you got your mic.
A few days ago, Vladimir Putin mentioned that in case of necessity, he will use the atomic weapons to defend Russia. Do you think he was bluffing, or there is something he really means? What would be, if it is not a bluff, what would be the answer of United States?
Thank you, Rector, for that question. So with regard to invoking the use of nuclear weapons, how troubling it is that Russian leadership would, either idly or not, invoke the use of nuclear weapons, given the fear globally that such an invocation would cause. So he has invoked it. That is not something that we can take lightly. I can tell you that we are prepared for absolutely every contingency. I'm pleased to say that, in Poland, there are now 12,500 US troops, all on Polish bases, including the 82nd Airborne and many others. We have the equipment here necessary to defend NATO territory, and I'm absolutely certain that, as I've said before, Polska jest bezpieczna I Polska jest zabezpieczona. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Next question, please. I'm very glad that this was the first question. Many people on the street, when I go to the store, they are just, some people know me, they ask me, Mr. Ambassador, will we have a strike, the nuclear strike against Poland, Ukraine, or perhaps something else? Thank you very much for this assurance. Okay. Okay, let's go then to the students. The lady there, the second row, please. Yes, that's you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, dear Mr. Ambassador. My name is Victoria Hladi. I'm from Ukraine. I'm a student at the College of Europe here in Warsaw. And my question would be, how does the US see the post-war security environment in Europe, and more specifically, the security guarantees to Ukraine? How does US see it at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria, for that question and for being here. First of all, how do we define success in terms of Ukraine's security? And that is absolute victory of the Ukrainian people in throwing the Russian invaders out of Ukraine. That is our definition of success in America, 1. 2, we absolutely have carefully gone through the contingencies we face as part of the NATO pact to defend every square inch of NATO territory, and have placed troops and equipment in what we call dynamic force posture to have the kind of security context that we want to have. And then last, as has been alluded in the comments by the Ukrainian ambassador to Poland, we are supplying and supporting those in Ukraine who have stayed and who are fighting with what they need to use to win this war. And that's going to be our posture for however long this takes. And while we hope that this is a short time frame in terms of how long this lasts, we are prepared in an enduring fashion, see this through however long it takes.
Thank you very much. Let me be a little bit personal. I'm so happy to see my students sitting there. I'll give you a chance to ask a question later, okay? No special treatment. Okay, on that side now. Yes, please.
My name is Zofia Nakielska-Kremers. I have experience in much country, also in Holland. And you title your speech "Leadership in the World." I think that, what do you think of is needed changed policy in the world? Finish with metropolis and big city, that is in the United States 80%, in Russia more than 70%, in Ukraine too. The people sit in the metropolis have no job, they migrated around the world, and perhaps it's better as everyone take small pieces ground and live in small villages. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you want to address this question. It's a little bit on different subjects. Different
Sure, absolutely. And I believe it was about social inequality, kind of the what we see is social inequality growing around the world, and President Biden sees that too. One of the things that he has really made a commitment to doing is to advance different efforts to advance social equality, both through tax systems, through development assistance, and other ways. And it's something that he very much believes that our alliances and our partnerships can advance as well. We are only as strong in the world as our weakest link, and we have an absolute moral requirement to focus on those 2/3 of humanity, frankly, who live close to abject poverty. And while we are all focused on the Ukraine crisis, that is not lost on the Biden administration. We have the most robust development assistance strategy, I think, of any administration to focus, ma'am, particularly on the 2/3 of humanity that live in abject poverty. I was also very pleased to see that Poland hosted last week in Warsaw a donors conference in which $6 billion was raised to begin to think about the future of Ukraine. There's going to be a time when we need to engage in rebuilding, in reconstruction, and I'm glad that we've begun that process now.
Yeah, thank you very much. And let me add that during the Biden administration, there was 100 million vaccination doses offered to other countries for free, those countries that are particularly in need for economic problems. Okay.
Thank you. I would like to, my name is Lewandowski, I'm a professor of this university too. I would like to thank you for your father, and I would like to ask a very small episode, which was a visit of President Carter in 1977 in Poland. I was 18 years old, and for my generation, that was a very, very big event. And we saw a friend of Poland, Polish people, somebody who understood us, and it was obvious that it was your father who instructed him first and told him about everything about the difference between Polish people and Soviet people. But coming to my question, the question is, in what way we as professors of this university or Polish professors can have influence on the world. To give you an example, when Angela Merkel was here in this room, just at the beginning of her term, one of colleagues, very gently, we are here very polite to our visitors, suggested that maybe that collaboration between Russia and Germany and Russia is not very safe for Ukraine, and maybe it's not going in good direction. However, if she took seriously those warnings, maybe the history would be now different. So what can we do to improve the world, to help you managing the relation between Poland and the US, and to help solve this crisis? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lewandowski. That's a great question. What can professors do in certain ways to contribute to the global challenges that we face today is what I heard there. And it's interesting because when I was younger, when my brother and sister and I were younger, my late father, Zbigniew Brzezinski, whenever we had disappointments in our lives, he would share a story about his own life in which he started professionally as a young professor. And he was a young professor at Harvard. He had gone through his PhD program in record time, had become an associate professor at Harvard, had met my mother at Wellesley, and they had expected to be an academic couple in Boston, Massachusetts for the rest of their lives. That's kind of what they saw as their life plan. And what my father told my brother, sister, and me, he said, then the worst thing happened and the best thing happened. The faculty at Harvard denied him tenure, and he had to leave. And he was shocked at the time. And he said he stayed up for 3 days and 3 nights because his world was rocked in terms of what he expected his life to be. And he asked himself, what could he have done differently as a young scholar, as a young professor, that would have allowed him to have a different course, and where could he take this next step? And he said, I'm going to go to New York and continue to be a professor, but I'm going to branch out because he said, I have my eyes on Washington and I want to influence policy, not just offer ideas, but to actually influence policy. And so he moved with my mother to New York. He set up the International Affairs program at Columbia University, but much more importantly, he branched out. He became an advisor to investment banks on Wall Street, and he joined the Council on Foreign Relations, which is one of the think tanks in New York, where he met David Rockefeller. And he and David Rockefeller set up something called the Trilateral Commission, which meant to bind together the leaders of Asia, America, and Europe in the fight against Soviet totalitarianism at the time. And it was through the Trilateral Commission that he then met then Governor Carter of Georgia, because they invited 4 progressive young governors from the American South who were involved in integration and the civil rights movement, one of whom was Governor Jimmy Carter. And after Watergate, my father turned to Jimmy Carter and said, you should consider running for president. You're a positive Southern Baptist, the perfect reflection off of Richard Nixon and so forth. And in '76, Jimmy Carter became the president-elect. And my father, as a Polish emigre to America, became the national security advisor, in which every single second of every day he was standing toe-to-toe with the Soviet Union. That would have never happened had he not branched out in New York to kind of bring in other dimensions to his scholarly and academic life. And he had the best professional 4 years of his life. And then after the Carter administration, Harvard came back and offered him tenure many times, which he didn't take because he had moved on and he had done something that I think he felt was, to your question, influential in terms of the direction of the way the world operates.
Thank you, and I hope all young professors of this university will remember this story, how to make the influence in the world and change it for better. Okay, now I have to give the voice to my students, okay? Otherwise they will make a hell of my life, okay? So, one of you, come on, get up, please. Which one? Make an agreement, make a deal. Okay, take it. Okay. All right.
So thank you, Ambassador, for your remarks. So as the war in Ukraine rages on and its effects reverberate across Europe, we can see a shift in defense policies of many countries, such as Germany or Finland and Sweden. And so my question is, could a bolstered, more Eurocentric NATO be a vehicle for US retrenchment from the region and allow it for a pivot towards Indo-Pacific, which, as we know, is a long-term strategy of the US? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that question. So to key off where I served as ambassador for 4 years, Sweden, obviously NATO membership, like EU membership, is a choice for the people, in this case of Sweden and Finland. But as an observer, see what they're doing, it is truly, absolutely incredible. And you have to ask yourself what the former KGB agent in charge of the St. Petersburg station must be thinking if his goal was to divide NATO. His previous job as station chief in St. Petersburg was in part to manage the Nordics and keep an eye on the Nordics, and now 2 of those countries may be joining NATO. It is an incredible development, which brings me to this heart of Europe, because Poland is truly the heart of Europe. There's no question that there's a absolutely changed dynamic in terms of security. If you ask yourself, have the Russians changed their force posture? Clearly they have in Ukraine and Belarus. So I will simply say, watch this space. Poland is the frontline country of NATO. It has a remarkable geostrategic position relating to this crisis that has local roots but global reach, and decisions are being assessed, will be made carefully. So I will simply say, watch this space.
All right, thank you. So many hands up. Okay. As a gentleman in the back, yes. Just to make some movement. All right.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Ambassador, esteemed guests. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My question to you, Mr. Ambassador, is
Could you present yourself, please?
Oh, sorry. Sebastian. I'm with the Board of Students, and I'm second year bachelor's here at the Faculty of International Relations. So my question to you is as follows. Given that we all know that the Polish government was fiercely pro-Donald Trump, and after Joe Biden has been elected as the President of the United States, our normally warm and cordial relations soured a little, not to say that they actually went ice cold. And now, given the conflict in Ukraine, would you say that this war has been a bit of a blessing, so to say, in disguise for our mutual relations? And also, once the attention of the world and the engagement with the war fizzes out, which eventually will happen, either the war will end or everyone will become less engaged, I think. Do you think that we will continue on this new path that we picked up again, went back to our old good relations? Or if the Polish government keeps behaving the way it is, our relations will sour again? Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian, for that question. Let me start by saying that never have American-Polish relations been closer simply because of the proximity of the government-to-government collaboration. As I mentioned, we have 12,500 troops here now. We have a range of collaboration on the security piece, on the governance piece, on the economic piece that is absolutely unprecedented. And I'm just very pleased, incredibly honored to be ambassador here now, because what an embassy does is they try to advance strategic alignments. And we face together a huge crisis. And I can report to you that we have an incredibly good working relationship with the Duda government, despite the fact that we have, of course, shared interests pertaining to the Ukraine crisis, but like with any relationship with any country around the world, including Canada or Mexico, differing interests as well. And the question is, how can we tactically mix and match based on those shared and differing interests? And at this point, it's working. It is a really cooperative, collaborative relationship that has gotten literally better day by day in terms of what we share with each other, what we warn each other that's coming down the pike, how we collaborate, and so forth. And I think that's just a good news story. Of course, there, like with any government, are differences, including ideological differences. But I think that we've managed to respectfully work together in ways that may not have even been predicted. We also work incredibly closely with the opposition, and we make no bones about that with either side. With the opposition, we say we're going to work closely with the government, and with the government, we say we're going to work closely with the opposition, because we're a guest in your country. I'm incredibly pleased as someone who is a Polish American to be ambassador here, but it's not just to one dimension of this. It's to all of the above. It's to the students, it's to the universities, it's to the businesses, and also to the opposition and to the government. And, you know, this post here that I'm now chief of mission of, U.S. Embassy Warsaw, it's 600 people. That's twice the size of my embassy in Stockholm. And I feel that we're all running hither, thither, and yon, because there are so many different ways that we can take every single day in advancing this relationship. This coming weekend, we'll welcome here the U.S. Treasury Secretary and the U.S. Agricultural Secretary, both incredibly key dimensions. The Atlantic Council, which is a leading think tank in Washington, D.C., will open up a new office in Warsaw. The German Marshall Fund is also opening up an office here. So there are a remarkable number of engagements to try to interpret, Sebastian, what it is that we're trying to do with each other. And that's what an embassy and an ambassador does. They interpret for a foreign country, what is it that we Americans are trying to do with you? And then your ambassador in DC, Marek Magarewski, in reverse, just like Ryszard Schnepf and Jerzy Koźmiński did incredible work for your country when they were serving in these posts, interpreting for the Americans what it is the Poles want to do. The difference now is that we have an imminent crisis on the border in which we do not know what Putin will do next. And we have to be prepared for every contingencies, and I'm pleased to tell you that we are.
Okay, thank you. Just a word to my students. I'm sorry, no privileges, as I said. You can ask me the question on Thursday, okay? During the class. I'm kidding, of course. I'm not a U.S. ambassador, but I'll ask him, I'll ask ambassador, and perhaps I will deliver you the answers. All right, so on the, okay, the gentleman there, yes, please. Yes, correct.
Hello and thank you. My name is Mikołaj Teperek, and I have a podcast about US politics and US culture here in Poland. It's called Inappropriate Diplomat. We'll order appropriate here, of course.
Please, not commercials.
Sure. The commercial break is off. So I have a couple of questions, because when we covered the war, obviously, and all other stuff like elections that was happening a couple of years ago, all our viewers and especially the younger generations, they're so exhausted about all the misinformation, disinformation fight, propaganda from both sides actually, not only the Russian Putin, but also the positive propaganda, which is a good word. It's a neutral word from the West and from the East, obviously. Do you have some tips for the younger generation on how not to get lost in all this information chaos, information, media from not only the TV and the mainstream media, but also from various range of podcasts, social medias, Instagram, and stuff we put online too? And a second question, because I said we cover culture.
One question only.
Are you a Coke or a Pepsi drinker? What's your first pick? Thank you so much.
That's a difficult question.
Yes. Well, I'll answer the second question first and say I'm a Coke drinker, Mikołaj. But I like Pepsi too. In all seriousness, I envy the generation coming into adulthood right now because of this ability to organize organically on the ground like never before through social media. And you know, just even as ambassador here, I've stood up a social media platform for my German Shepherd. I have a dog named Teddy. So please, everyone, if you're willing, go to Ambassador Teddy and maybe even like some of the things that I've put up there, but at least visit it if you're willing, because it is a way of communicating and relating with people other than through government and politics. I think we sometimes need to give that a rest and connect with each other in organic, human, genuine ways that doesn't have an advocacy dimension, that doesn't have an agenda. And that's the beauty of this moment. I have a 12-year-old daughter who's here with me, and she is like a social media guru, and I've learned so much from her in terms of social media approaches, when to post, when not to post. I've made all the mistakes, believe me, I've made all the mistakes. But it is a fantastic way of connecting with people, and I urge everyone here to be able to do that, because quite frankly, I think that as you go into adulthood, being able to understand these information mechanisms, being able to share how creative, how good your work was that you developed through social media is, to me, a huge asset. I think it's an extremely interesting thing if someone has developed thousands of followers through love of dance, or the University of Warsaw, or the lecturers at the University of Warsaw, or sharing some kind of theme or multiple themes. I think it's an amazingly innovative moment, and I actually think that the young generation will do much better than my generation when they come into leadership, because they've been part of communities that are organic, that are innovative, the product of creativity, product of being of starts and fails. What worked, what didn't work. I think that's all very, very important, and that's a product of these platforms. My embassy has a very robust social media kind of program to be able to relate with people into the four corners of this country. And I love when I'm walking down ulica Puławska, or on one of the streets in Warsaw, and someone says, "Hey, that's Teddy, isn't it?" Because they'd seen Ambassador Teddy's website, and I'm sure I'm going to see more of it. Thank you for that question, Mikołaj.
All right, Professor Wyrzykowski, please.
Mirosław Wyrzykowski, I'm lawyer. And my question is concerning new dimension and new quality of leadership you described. What the role and the function can play rule of law in your perspective?
Sure. Thank you, Professor Wyrzykowski, and thank you for all your help over the years. I'm grateful to you, sir. And I recently hosted at the U.S. Embassy residence here Professors Hubert Izdebski and Eva Wentowska just day before yesterday. It was wonderful to see my friends who helped me so much as I was trying to write my book about the struggle for constitutionalism in Poland. So first of all, what is the value of rule of law? There's nothing more valuable, I feel, in terms of helping manage a society, address the challenges it faces, and building an economy and business, because Poland, as a medium-sized country, faces a tremendous amount of competition around the world from other countries that want to attract business. And what Poland has the ability to offer is legal certainty and rule of law. But it's something just like we as Americans we have to continue to cultivate it. We have, as President Biden said at the Royal Council here during his speech, we also have our challenges. And these kind of stressors on democracy are a product of a number of things, including the role of money in government, the fact that many of our leaders don't see each other anymore, that they just communicate technologically. and other reasons. And so it takes a real effort to kind of protect legal certainty and ensuring that contracts are seen as sacrosanct, that there isn't bureaucratic or political arbitrariness. And I will say in this vein, I want to say thank you, quite frankly, for some of the decisions that were made over the last couple of months with regard to TVN, with regard to some of the decisions concerning some of the pieces of legislation that were either submitted or were vetoed. These were, as a friend of Poland that the United States is, we were thankful and grateful to see. But these things need to be cultivated. I will say, just as someone who was here 30 years ago, just as is the case in the United States, the politicization of society and the perceived ability for people to compromise and get along. 30 years ago, it was the Solidarity Opposition and General Jaruzelski's communist regime that were managing a transition. 30 years later, we now have sometimes a society that I see as, sometimes maybe even more politicized than when it was back then. And it is important, particularly during a crisis, for there to be a unity of purpose and a shared definition of the challenge, despite differences politically between people. It takes work. We're working on that in the United States, and so that's my observation.
Thank you, Ambassador. You are absolutely right. We grew up during these 30 years a little bit. Also in being more conflictive on political issues, that's natural. We are the grown-ups, grown-up democracy, at least. All right, the students now. All right, the lady over there, just... Hold on a second. We need to hear you.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. My name is Agnieszka Homańska. I'm a student of international relations and a part of the Polish Forum of Young Diplomats. And I had an amazing opportunity to attend President Biden's speech, actually, together with Mr. Ambassador Schnepf. We were standing there. And today is the day of Europe, as we already mentioned. And I would like to ask you, Mr. Ambassador, would the US be actually happy if the EU were more united, especially in the sector of defense and external policy? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agnieszka. Well, that is a great question. And really, in certain ways, the overlay of NATO and the EU is what, kind of generally speaking, we as Americans define as Europe. And so, again, a unity of purpose and a shared definition of the challenge is absolutely what we seek to cultivate in NATO, and we're doing so as a NATO member. But we also see, as a non-member of the EU, we hope to see that between and amongst our European friends. I don't think that people who, are transatlantis love any conception of Europe fragmenting. It's instead a kind of a unified approach and a shared definition of the opportunity as well is something that we hope the Europeans cultivate. That's ultimately a decision for them. I do think that it's important, but Poland is an incredibly important country in terms of its geography, in terms of its people, in terms of its economy for Europe, and for as much harmony and closeness and collective decision-making that can be advanced between Poland and Europe is absolutely something that we want to see, and we see it as in Europe's self-interest, and we want the best for Europe. So absolutely, yes, is the answer to your question.
All right, thank you very much. And we are approaching the end of our meeting. But before that, two more questions. Wow. So I have, I have to make a favor to myself and ask Professor Kuźniar.
Thanks so much, Ryszard. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Ambassador, how would you assess resolve of the United States and the whole West probably to expect to ask Moscow before any true future normalization of relations with Russia to first remove Putin as a president, which obviously belongs to Russians themselves. Second, punishment of war criminals according to international standards, which may take place in Moscow, why not? And then the third, which is also important, especially for our Ukrainian friends, the brothers, fair compensation for all damages which Russia inflicted on and is still inflicting on Ukraine in this war. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. Well, President Biden has used the word genocide with regard to what's happened in Ukraine. It's very difficult for me to see how any normal relationship evolves out of what's happened in Ukraine. Again, we expect the Ukrainian people ultimately to succeed in this crisis and toss the Russians out of Ukraine. And we have stood up in the State Department an office to begin the process to investigate and gather evidence of war crimes in Ukraine. The pictures are horrific, and it's just the tip of the iceberg, I suspect. I think that we will see a lot more. You know, in international relations, trust is a key dimension. President Biden is a longtime leader in America, and President Putin has been on the scene since 1999. Trust has been completely broken between us and Putin's Kremlin. It is difficult for me to see a workaround in terms of a normalized relationship. That said, we still assiduously are working for somehow diplomacy to have a role to stop this. We are trying to work every dimension to stop what Russia is doing in Ukraine. And if there are leaders in Russia who want to advance the diplomatic dimension, we have people on our side who are willing to hear that out and to try to advance that as well.
All right. Well, on the one person, and frankly being selfish a bit, I gave the previous question to Professor Kuźniar because I take care of my my contemporary life, and talking about the future, I'll give a word to the students, of course, because they hopefully will remember that. Okay, at the end.
Well, Ambassador Brzezinski, first of all, thank you for a captivating lecture, and to Ambassador Schnepf, thank you for being a man of the word and not giving me any special treatment.
Don't forget to present yourself.
Okay, I'm a student of American Studies Center in the University of Warsaw. My question puts a little bit America more in the center. So the question pertains to military overspending that Americans had been taunted for quite some time now, at least up until the breakout of the Ukrainian crisis. My question is, how do you think that will change the critics? Maybe then they will have been proven wrong with what's going on in the Ukraine. And how do you see the military spending changing in the future? Is it going to decrease, stay the same, or maybe increase and be redirected to some other allied countries like Ukraine has been throughout the crisis? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. You know, we have been spending on military and defense in a way I think that has been shown to be correct when it comes to this crisis, because I think Putin understands clearly the consequences if he comes onto NATO territory and does something bad here. I'm pretty sure of that. And that is because of our troops standing shoulder to shoulder with the Poles, but also our equipment here. There are, we have F-35s, F-15s, F-16s, everything that we need here to patrol airspace and to protect ground territory that we would need. So I'm pretty comfortable that we've been doing the right thing, while at the same time able to protect our interests in the Middle East and in Asia. And so I don't see any problem there. Quite frankly, I think that it was good foresight. We have an $800 billion a year defense budget that eclipses any other national defense budget by 10 times. And I think that given what we saw this year, it was worth doing. Because imagine for a second what would have happened if Poland were not a member of NATO. I don't know what would have happened, but I'm worried, let's put it that way. I'm sure that Poland would have been more anxious and uncertain. I think it may have been a little bit more difficult had that sense and that certainty of security that NATO membership gave Poland. If that wasn't there, I wonder what the reaction to the humanitarian challenge would have been. Would it have been different? I don't know, but it's worth thinking about. Impressive is the defense spending that your government is undertaking. And I want to emphasize this. We just announced a $6 billion deal to sell our top-of-the-line Abrams tank to the Poles. That is a tank that we have never given to any foreign partner or ally because of its specificity. I have emphasized to our leaders that while Poland has done great economically over 30 years, $6 billion is a lot of money for this country, in which the Poles have to dig into their pockets deep to get the money. So it is a big deal that the Poles are buying Abrams, HIMARS, F-35s, Patriots, and the like. This is a big investment for the safety and security of future generations. Is it worth it? Unfortunately, look at Putin. But it's not nothing to the people of this land, and it's probably going to come at the expense of something else. And the Secretary of Defense has asked me to emphasize that the Poles take advantage of every possibility of exchanges, training, continuing education as it pertains to military, and collateral activities pertaining to military. We are looking for every possibility to do some of this manufacturing in Poland, so at least some of this accrues to the Polish people. We're thinking proactively that way. It's important for your government and your people to think that way as well, because it's an expense that has to be made, but it's not cheap, and we have to look for ways to benefit completely this society, every man, woman, and child, so that it has the best possible good dimension to it for people at large, not just specifically the military. And I thought that was a good message from our Secretary of Defense.
All right, thank you very much. And just to wrap up nicely, no more questions on the mind, and very short answer. You are one of the most busy ambassadors I've ever seen.
Thank
you. It's real. I'm frank with that. Now, if you had a choice to be a US ambassador living in Dzikowskiego, or to make a research on Constitution and live in Tamka Street, what would be your choice?
Thank you, Ryszard. Well, first of all, I want to say this. Yes, I am busy. I also love Poland, the Polish people, and the American-Polish relationship. So when you're busy working on something that you love, it's not that hard, one. Two, I see this all as part of a continuum. I'm so glad coming into this position, I had the chance to live for 2 years in Poland. and learn just a little bit of something about Poland before coming here, to see from the street how the U.S. Embassy operates, what was going well, what didn't go well. As a Polish American, I have to say I didn't like those lines going around the American Embassy when I was here 30 years ago. I'm glad I see less of them. I think it's important. I salute my predecessor, Georgette Mosbacher, for getting Poland into the visa waiver program. She did great work there. I will also say that I'm glad I ran another embassy before I came to Poland. I've only been here for 15 weeks. This is not the time for on-the-job training, to say the least. And so I'm glad I had that experience that President Obama gave me for a smaller post, which had a different set of alignments. In Sweden, it was about immigrant assimilation, sustainability in the Green Revolution, gender equality, the future of the Arctic, but still alignments. And that's what an ambassador has. The ambassador doesn't have money or a military. The only thing an ambassador has is the power to convene, the power to bring people together who otherwise might not align. But you know what? That's a big deal, because a lot of these problems can only be solved by having a multiplier effect of a number of different dimensions of a society fully engaged. The government, the business community, the academic community, your overseas partners. And so now is a time pregnant with possibility for an ambassadors, and I'm just very thankful to God that I have the chance to do that here in Poland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hold on, please. This was the best message to the future diplomats, by the way. I will remember that. But before we say goodbye, I would like to invite Rector of the University, Professor Nowak, just for a little short, how can I say, surprise? It's another surprise.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much. It was great. It was a pleasure to listen to you. In particular, it was a pleasure to listen to your answers to the questions. And as we said earlier, and as we said during this official meeting, University of Warsaw's doors are always open for you. So I hope you will be also giving from time to time, maybe in better time, lectures for our students. On behalf of the community of Warsaw University, I wanted to give you something what I hope it will be interesting for you. This is a, family picture of your father when he was getting honorary degree at Warsaw University. So maybe you will find a good place to hang the picture. And here there is a movie, part of what we have seen. Thank you very much.
This will go right in the front of the American Embassy residence, and I hope to see you all there. It's the People's House. I look forward to saying Witamy when you come over. Thank you. It'll be there.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, the public. But please remain in your seats. Thank you. Remain in your seats. The ambassador will leave first, and then the audience, okay? Sorry for that. This is just perhaps a little bit inconvenient, but...
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who had the courage